Listening on Audible helps your imagination soar. Whether you listen to stories, motivation, any genre you love, you can be inspired to imagine new worlds, new possibilities, new ways of thinking. Maybe you'll find inspiration in the incredible true story of Black female mathematicians at NASA in Hidden Figures, or the fantasy world of Throne of Glass. There's more to imagine when you listen. As an Audible member, you get to choose one title a month to keep from their entire catalog. New members can try Audible free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/imagine or text imagine to 500-500. That's audible.com/imagine or text imagine to 500-500.
This podcast is brought to you by eHarmony, the dating app to find someone you can be yourself with. Why doesn't eHarmony allow copy and paste in first messages? Because you are unique, and your conversations should reflect that. eHarmony wants you to find someone who will get you. How are you going to know who gets you if people send you the same generic conversation starters they message everyone else? Conversations that actually help you get to know each other. Imagine that. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up today.
Hello, welcome. Let's chat. It's hard. You want to talk? I know, that's disappointing. Sit back. Let's work this out. How's it going? What are we doing here? Where are you going? Hey there. Wow. It's not always easy. It's amazing if you think about it. Let's think about this. Strange. I have some thoughts about that. Life is hard. Trauma bonded.
Welcome to Trauma Bonded. I'm Elly Westberg here with... Oh no T. T, where are you? I'm just kidding. She's not with me on this one. But I have the privilege of interviewing former This Is Actually Happening storyteller Anonymous from episode 290, What If Your Husband Entered the Void? If you've not heard the episode or the trauma bonded response, we highly recommend seeking them out and taking a listen before embarking here. And without further ado, my conversation with Anonymous. Thanks for joining us on Trauma Bonded. Sorry T's not here. Tell me what your life update is since your story was recorded.
Well, thanks so much for having me and giving an opportunity to kind of speak, because I believe that was one of the most cathartic and pivotal moments of my healing journey. And so I think it's been, about 7 months now since my story was released, and I was really nervous the night that I knew that it was going to be released in the early morning. I think it was 3 a.m. My eyes flipped open and I listened to it, and almost immediately was flooded with relief, because I hadn't heard. I didn't know what it would sound like. I think that the episode completely nailed what I wanted to get out. It was like a 6 hours interview that was whittled down to less than an hour, but really masterfully edited, and I felt very true to form. But what surprised me the most was I'd set up a new email address anonymously, and the emails from people started coming in, within a couple hours. I guess it must have been Australia and the other side of the world time, of people almost unanimously so supportive and almost unanimously saying, I've been through something just like you, which I think if you're on an episode of This Is Actually Happening, you believe that you have a pretty, insane or shocking or unusual story. But I think that there was such an enormous amount of relief in knowing that not only do I have thousands of people that I know about now that experienced something very similar to me, but also that they got some relief and comfort in understanding that they were also not alone. So that was a big shift for me.
What does that feel like? Just to have a complete stranger say, I went through something similar. What does that feel like inside?
It's like a really big relief. I think, that's part of the important work that I think that you're doing, is that we carry around our stories. And a lot of the time, stories that have some component of addiction or abuse or anger, or those negative emotions, we see them as some sort of personal failing in ourselves, and we keep them to ourselves. Yeah. But I think that, and I think, that you and Whit and T probably already know this, I think they need to come out in order for us to heal fully. And also, I really think that evil and cruelty kind of thrive in darkness. And when you expose them to the light, they lose their power. And I think,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what I felt like, just this sense of like, okay, this, after all of the therapy and all of the work that I've been trying to do and understanding my role in all of this, it felt like there was a completion. That was sort of the final step. So like a light, like a happiness. I felt much lighter and better after the episode.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what is the latest? I know you just went on a little vacay and you had something happen sort of related to your story that you wanted to talk about. And I'm sorry if I'm putting you on
No, not at all. This was
Okay.
so, and I still don't know what this all means. I do know that in all of this, there are no coincidences. I think things do happen generally to teach us something more. And I'm still trying to figure this, and maybe you can help me, Elly, because I won, one of the things that's happened in all of this post, life shift is that I've been doing really well in my career. I mean, I've always been very career oriented, but I've been winning awards and doing things that I haven't before. And I won this spiff at work that gave me a bunch of Visa gift cards as a reward for performance. And I decided I would take the kids, I don't want them to miss out on all the things that kids with a present father would have, or an intact family. So they'd never been to Disneyland. I'd never been to Disneyland. It's not at the top of any of my life bucket lists, but they're at the perfect age for it. So it's, 3,000 miles from home. And I took them there on this spiff. We were super excited. We went to visit the beaches.
Wait, I'm sorry. I have to interrupt.
Yeah.
What's a spiff?
Oh, a spiff is like a reward for performance in my tech
is that an
job.
acronym?
It might be. I've been doing this so long, I don't know what it's not going to. Yeah, special award, special incentive.
Okay. Well, congrats, by the way, and I'm glad that you've been killing it at work. That does not shock me at all. And Disneyland is expensive. I've also never been.
No.
I've only been to Disney World, but my partner really wants to go to Disneyland. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Continue.
No,
Was it awesome?
Well, I would, we went to Slovenia last summer because I used ChatGPT to come up with like hidden gems. I don't like crowds. It wasn't my, ideal spot, but everybody is really nice. Like, I think they teach the Disneyland employees to not say no, because any request is like yes, and the people are nice and the rides are fun. And, especially my son, I think, I've read that kids of narcissistic parents carry around a sadness. Of course, there's the abandonment and everything. And particularly, he had this like light, like he could just be a kid for the first time in so many years, which was so amazing. And took them to the beach around LA after. And we went and we got, I don't know, an LA kind of drink with turmeric and ginger and orange juice. Yeah. And we were crossing the boulevard to go and look at some other shops. And I saw this family on the other side of the street. There was a green light and they hadn't started to cross yet. And I had, and I thought, did they see something I don't? Like, why is that family not crossing? And then as I got closer, I felt this jolt of familiarity. And I realized that this is the ex-wife of my ex-husband. And
oh my God.
I have never run into her. She lives in the same city that I live in, but on the opposite sides of the city, runs in different social circles. We have no friends in common. I had only met her once before, and this was the year after my ex-husband had kind of fallen apart, had taken the ayahuasca, had kind of changed personalities. And I was trying to dig into what was the truth and what was not. In my understanding of their relationship, it was that, she had been a bit of a monster to him and like a terrible person in general. And I felt really bad that he had to endure kind of what she had inflicted on him. And when I met her in person, she told me the truth. She was quite wonderful. We were both in tears and crying at the end of it. And we hugged, and I said, thank you so much. I am so sorry for all the years I spent believing you were a terrible person. I'm sorry that for what you went through. And she hugged me back and said, I'm always here for you. We follow each other on social media. We've rarely interacted. She has liked a couple of the things that I have written that were kind of deeply emotional and probably she resonated with. But I had not seen her before until on the street in Venice Beach, thousands of miles from home. So it was wild.
This is wild. Okay, can you remind me and our listeners,
Yes.
this is the ex-wife that preceded you,
Yeah.
right, in his relationship history? Okay. And so when you locked eyes, was there this immediate, like, just magnetism, like you came together and sort of pulled over on the sidewalk to chat?
Yeah,
Like, how
well, I
did
didn't know what
that
to do because she's
conversation
also with her
erupt?
husband and their children. And I know that he doesn't know. I
Oh,
know
shit.
that there was very bad blood, like between my ex and her current husband when they split up. I didn't know like anything but what I'd been told, which was probably not altogether true. So I had to kind of pretend.
Yeah.
There's more wildness to this because, we just made small talk for a while and she was kind of like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to see you here. And I said, wow, this world is really small. And I think that her husband could sense the awkwardness because he said, where did you guys go? And her kids are standing there. They're a couple years older than mine, but same age. And we said, we just went to Disneyland. And so we just made some small talk about our favorite rides. And we were kind of saved by an Uber about 2 minutes later that pulled up and, her husband said, oh, her Uber's here. Like, nice to see you. And my daughter tugged on my arm and said, Mommy, who is this lady? And I said, well, she's a friend. And she kind of side-eyed me suspiciously, like she knows all my friends. And this was not one she'd ever seen before. And I hugged her kind of awkwardly as I do. And then she got in the car and we all waved at each other. And this is the wildest part that I don't still know the answer to. And we're walking away and I'm shaking. I'm trying not to shake. And I said, let's go in this store here. And my son said, was that Daddy's other kids?
Oh, wow.
And I don't, yeah. So obviously there's still some healing because that makes me cry. And I don't know, the best, you can tell me what you think, Elly, but the best that I can explain that is maybe it was in my, my energy I was giving off, like that sort of frenetic panic, what the shit do I do here thing, or else like, because here was, this lovely woman and her kids who kindly look, and also the shift in her husband's face, because as he was talking to my daughter looks very much like her dad. And I think that he might have known when he was making that small talk, perhaps, that, oh, these are Matt's children. There was something in that, but I said, no, Daddy doesn't have any other children besides you. But yes, that was Daddy's first wife. And I don't think they'd known that he'd ever been married before prior to that. So yeah, that was wild. And I still don't know what to make of it.
Oh, wow. How old is your son?
He just turned 12.
So he's got like a really intense inner secret life right now, trying to figure everything out. Not that I know anything about kids except my own 12-year-old brain. And I guess, you're going to notice that sort of weird energy around you and maybe start to immediately try to place things in a world that you're not entirely familiar with.
Yeah, there was some kind of, and she messaged me on the plane when we were flying back from LA and said, I don't know what that was. Like, that was so random, but I think of you all the time. And, if you ever need anything. And I was like, ditto.
Wow. That's kind of really wonderful.
Right?
I've been thinking a lot about sort of the patchwork of women and women's stories.
I know.
And,
yes.
And how I don't know, the qualities that women share are so powerful and special. And when they come together in unity to support one another, it's really kind of what makes the world go round.
Very much.
What an amazing, what are the odds?
Well, I told a couple of friends. I wrote about it because I couldn't get it out of my head. And, you know, I wrote about it in a kind of a vague way on my Instagram account. And my friends were like, who the hell did you run into? And I was like, oh my God, this is like his first wife. And they all, of course, know. And they're like, what the, like, no, that can't just happen accidentally. Like, you don't run, right? I don't think so.
No,
so
it seems really bloody unlikely that your paths would cross there.
Yeah. There's some sort of, I think when in the aftermath of trauma like this, and even though I am doing so well and really like the kids are doing so well too, I think you always feel like there's a shark circling underwater. Like even when things are quiet, you know that they're not always going to be.
What's next?
That's what I thought. I was like, is she going to be a support mechanism in some impending litigation I don't know about, or something terrible? Because that is what my gut is telling me right now, which is kind of horrible. But
since that encounter, do you feel like she's a true ally now?
Yes. I think she kind of was really from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, she's very quiet and very private. And I mean, the first time I reached out to her to kind of like, hey, you know, you don't know who I am, but I really need to understand some things and I'm hoping you'll meet me for coffee. And she was kind of like, I know exactly who you are. I got the impression that she was sort of half expecting my call, even though, you know, they got married in their early 20s.
Yeah.
And it didn't last all that long. But, you know, a lot of the same things that I experienced, so did she on a lesser scale, because they were divorced before, you know, they hit their 30s. There was no kids, so it was different.
Yeah.
But the way it ended, an implosion of fury and drug abuse and all of that stuff was very similar.
I'm just curious, like how much have you talked to your children about any of this?
So it's such a fine line because you don't want to say anything negative.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to gaslight them.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty nervous to ask me questions. I did explain after the hospital when their dad was in the hospital and diagnosed originally with bipolar. I explained what bipolar disorder was and what that meant. But then, you know, on a supervised visit at one point, he told them that wasn't true. He didn't have that diagnosis and that wasn't real. And so they ended up going to one of my friends who happens to be a doctor, and my daughter asked, is Daddy sick? Like, does he? And, you know, she said yes, like tried to explain herself. But they do go to therapy. Once every 2 weeks, they go to art therapy, and that helps. But it is very difficult to explain, especially the questions now like, you know, is Daddy mean to you? And it's a really hard one to answer because I do want to be honest, but I also don't want to, you know, I don't want to have them fear.
It's a hard road to hoe.
It's a really hard, and my current therapist says, you know, you sort of have to toe the line because is he going to be in their life one day? Because if so, you've got to be really careful.
Because he currently is not, right? I mean, that was the last thing that was said, I feel like, in your episode, is that he wasn't in their lives, or he hadn't been for a while.
He did rear up again after the episode. Okay. I did go into I think that I have the sense that he's heard it somehow. And we can get into that a little bit. That's just my sense through social media, the things that I did see when I was reading them. He did rear up. He had his current girlfriend, email me and ask to have the kids be allowed to talk to him just by WhatsApp. And my sense on that was that he was doing it because he was getting some hassle on the why are you seeing your kids, because he really hasn't even tried.
Yeah.
But, you know, I also don't want to say no or like inhibit my kids in any way. So there was some calls that were supervised through the therapist for several weeks, but it was hard on the kids. It was hard on the therapist because they ended up kind of not wanting to go there anymore, but also like being really uncomfortable and not knowing what to say when, you know, he would introduce his new family and they didn't want to ask him any of the questions that they really wanted to ask.
Wow.
So they continued a little bit after I had my mom kind of supervise a couple of calls. But again, after the last one, which was about a month ago, my son hid the phone that I'd set up the WhatsApp on in the couch. And my mom said that he seemed really upset, was like biting his nails. My daughter didn't want to have much to do with the calls. And I just, at this point, I am going to let them lead it, like if they want to talk, but I'm not going to try and force them. It's a really, I would say that's the hardest part about all of this, is knowing how to navigate this and honor their requirements.
Well, your son's 12. I mean, they're getting to ages where
I know.
they can make these decisions for themselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. But what I know, all kids, even 12-year-olds, like, is that beneficial to them to have weekly calls with their dad who lives in Bali?
Ugh, sounds terrible to me.
Well, it is, right? Because they're like, well, why am I not there? Why are these other people there? Why doesn't he want to come and be with me?
And those kids, I mean, they're not conversationalists. I mean, kids like that don't want to talk on the phone to adults that they can't see and don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's a very awkward conversation.
Yeah.
And is he doing it for them so they know his father, or is he doing it to check off some box in his mind that he's doing the right thing as a man and a father? Like, what are the motivations?
Yeah, I think I have my own opinions on that, but I mean, I believe that, again, like I think what I said in the episode and what I've learned from therapists is like love is showing up, right? When you love someone, you are cheering them on at their games. You are there at their, especially with a kid, you're there at their parent teacher conferences. You're building them up, and you're not calling them from your beach house on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
Like, so to me, again, and it's, my therapist had said, if you, hypothetical situation, and you knew that he would never be there, never be on the same continent, never be a part of their lives, perhaps you have a conversation with them about sociopathy and what that means, that you can't have emotions for other people. But if you think that he's going to be here and like trying to get back in their lives at some point, then you have to just be really careful how you navigate that with the court system and, with their own hearts. So, yeah.
Well, I think they're really lucky to have a conscientious mother like you. It sounds like you're definitely carrying the weight of the world in regard to all of that. So
you just want to do the best thing.
I know. But to not just give in to the hate, I think is doing a lot of hard work.
Yeah, no, and I've had to develop systems of spam folders and like having friends check my spam folder if I'm not feeling super, because the messages that I get, anything in regards to the kids, are pretty harsh. And so I can handle them sometimes, and other times I'm like, okay, someone else like vet this.
You're saying messages from him, or?
Yeah, like if he, I had messaged, because the phone calls were supposed to happen on Tuesdays when the kids were with my mom after school, because I had a boundary of like, I don't want them in my house hearing the voice, and everything can set me back. I don't know what he's going to do, and I don't know that I should be the one supervising the calls to make sure that nothing happens. And they have to be supervised. There's still an existing court order. I don't know the state of sobriety or what kind of things are going to be said.
Yeah.
So yeah, my mom was like happy to do it. She's a little bit more removed from it. She was with the kids every day on Tuesdays anyway, but he wasn't calling during the times that were allocated. So I did send an email reminder saying, your son was sitting with the phone, kind of waiting for the call. If you are interested in talking to them, like, it would be good to do it consistently per the therapists. And then I just got, like a pretty nasty message back, actually. What? Talking about like, I'm determined to make it not work, and was I just trying to be relevant? Why don't I go write a blog post about what a bad dad he is? And I'm almost, I'm basically an old lady now, and it was just nothing to do with the kids, but still pretty brutal.
So, I mean, is him sort of missing his appointments just like a little bit of a fuck you?
Oh, for sure. I think it's like
You're not going to tell me what to do.
Yeah. He wants to be able to call them like when he wants.
Yeah.
And also, I think just being away from them for so long, not understanding that kids have like schedules. Also, there's like a 13-hour time difference or something like that. So he was saying it was too early his time. When the kids were available, it was only 6 a.m. his time, and he
can't get up for his kids. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to start going like Long Island Jewish mother here. Do you want to talk about what made you think that he did indeed hear the episode?
Yeah, so I think that I used to write like for Time AOL on blogs way back in the day. And I've been a writer online before, so I know that no matter, you can have 200 positive comments to an Instagram post or a Medium blog or whatever that you put. And if there's someone who's nasty, one comment who says that you're like an entitled bitch or that you're stupid, those are the ones that sit with you. It's not the 99 ones from the kind Jewish mothers ever. So I was actually really amazed because after this episode aired, it was a couple thousand. I was blown away.
Wow.
I'm really curious about the other people in the episodes, but I had so many emails. I read all of them. I think I've replied now to all of them. I wanted to make sure that I did, but they were so supportive and wonderful. And actually, even the Facebook page was also quite supportive. A lot of people saying I missed some red flags, and I also talked about his looks way too much. And I agree, but I did that on for a reason. So in our society, like on the dating apps, like you choose someone on a dating app based on what they look like, right? Do they have like nice eyes? Do they look like they're a nice person? Because if they're handsome, they're probably a nice person. Like it's super fucked up.
Yeah.
Why do we do that? We like, someone who looks like they don't meet our physical standards. Well, they must be mean, because it's probably more likely that someone who is very like meticulously put together and has 6-pack abs is probably leaning more on the narcissism scale,
right?
Than the pudgy guy eating fudge or whatever. Like it's not. It was a marker, and I was like, well, yeah, like all of these other women like really want him, so I must be lucky. And also, I know that in my first court date, I knew what he looked like and how he presented himself and how effectively he can lie because he looks like he does. And so that's a big reason why too. Like he is living in Indonesia with another beautiful, accomplished, intelligent woman who like wants to overlook a bunch of things because he looks like he'd be a nice person. He acts like he's a nice person. Like until you uncover the layers, you can't see the monster. And so I did say it a lot, but there was, and I, fault myself for my shallowness that brought me in there in the beginning. But I think that I thought if you have all of the things, the handsome husband and the nice house and then the 2.3 kids and the good job, then you have happiness. And I think those good looks are part of the story. That's how we date today.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there is this idea of a quote unquote complete package, right? Like he's got it all, baby. She's got it all. And attractiveness is part of that. We can't put our heads in the sand and act like it's not.
Yeah. No, I have like gone off the dating apps, like never again, because I think that it's almost impossible to get a sense for someone. I mean, even past that, I was like, wow, like he's good looking and he's really nice. But I think that excuses a lot of things, and it really shouldn't. There's actually a Hidden Brain episode. Do you ever listen to that podcast?
No, but people keep talking to me about it.
Look up the one on beauty and how people like who are conventionally attractive according to our societal standards are treated versus those who don't.
Yeah, that's
and
real.
It is really fascinating. Yeah. So I think that's part of the pattern too, right? And trying to go outside your normal check the boxes. Like I was pretty when I did listen, and then when I looked at Reddit, and I will never look at Reddit again because people can be anonymous. They're so mean there. No,
They're so mean on Reddit.
Well, and I think it's really easy to say, well, she should have seen all the red flags, but I can tell you that all of my friends, all of who are like intelligent women and men, and all of his best friends, like we were all fooled.
Yeah.
There is no one who was like, I saw that coming at all. Even those who knew that he had struggled with addiction and had been in rehab before were all like, that was dramatic. And that was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry that you ever read anything on Reddit. I lurk on there all the time because I just want to see how people are kind of taking this is actually happening episodes. And I always want to chime in and be like, shame on all of you in your comments, but I would never throw myself to the wolves like that. So I just sort of review the comments and I can't help but if people are like piling on, I can't help but take it personally, like I vetted that story or I helped bring in that story or whatever. And and you're right. It's hard when it's a lot of negative, even in the face of a lot of positive. People are pretty brutal over there.
Yeah, I think it's more the anonymous. And I will say there was one woman, this comment stuck with me through, all the social media posts and all of the emails I got to, because I had sort of not been blaming the ayahuasca, but I saw ayahuasca like not as a primarily crappy thing, because I do know that it's helped a lot of people. But there was one woman, it was on the Facebook group for This Is Actually Happening, and she said, thank goodness that the ayahuasca removed the mask when it did. Like, you're only in your mid 40s and now you have this opportunity to like live your full life, and that you could see this person for who he really was. And I was like, man, that is so true. That's exactly what it did. And I never looked at it as a positive.
Thank the ayahuasca, not blame the ayahuasca.
Yeah, thank it for revealing the truth.
Wow.
Because otherwise I could have, if I had written an obituary for my ex-husband in like a year before this happened, I would have told you he's one of the most kind humans I'd ever met. I was could not see the mess I was in. So yeah, I would say that it's still mostly good. Just avoid the Reddit cesspool, because
I can't
the
stop.
consensus there is, I know. If Reddit thinks I'm like just really, really dumb. And also that ayahuasca should never have been offered up as an option, because those people know that like someone with a drug problem just taking more drugs. But when you get desperate and you're trying to help someone with an addiction and they've refused all other methods and you are desperate to keep an intact family and your children healthy, you will do anything.
Yeah. There's a serious empathy problem on the Reddit subreddit. That's for sure. I don't think you answered why you thought he heard the episode.
Oh, because in a Reddit subforum, there was a comment, and I was looking pretty obsessively, I would say the first week after the podcast.
Yeah.
And then someone wrote in a Reddit subforum, you may have seen this one, I don't know, but like, oh, she has tried to tell this story before. And it was like sort of like someone who knew like things that I hadn't shared in the episode. And my friend, one of my best friends, read it, and she's like, that was either him or his girlfriend for sure.
Oh, wow.
And then I saw that and my heart kind of stopped. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going back into this thread. So there's probably a pile on to it. But just put like a spin on it. Like I was, trying to portray myself as a victim and that I needed to get out of that. And he was this father who was trying to be there for his kids. And I think anyone who has ever known us in real life would not say that, including people who are even sympathetic. I don't know of anyone in our circle who had been sympathetic after what they saw, but yeah, I was 98% sure that was either him or his girlfriend. And obviously I didn't advertise or say anything on any of my social media channels or to anyone really about doing this podcast. I wanted to do it to help myself heal, but I also wanted to do it to hopefully reach and connect with other people who had been through something similar, because it is completely debilitating. So if I had been doing this for publicity or to like make people feel sorry for me, I would have, associated myself with it.
Right. Right. You would have spread that shit around town. um, one thing I think that's wonderful about this actually happening is that I feel like Whit kind of gives people like a little gift. Like he takes like all these hours of thoughts and feelings and distills it into this like hopefully comprehensive and complex hour-long, menage of your story. And, I've talked to people like in a pre-interview setting, and people have said to me that they hope that they can not only get their story out and share it, but have this little gift handed back to them so that they can share it with their kids when they come of age one day. Like, let's sit in this room.
Yes.
We're not going to talk. We're just going to listen for an hour and then we can talk. Like, it's a great like way to get a lot of your story out in a concise manner. Is that something you've thought about? And if so, have you thought about like when you think that might be the time?
Yeah, 100% it was. I cried pretty much the whole time I listened to that episode because he has a gift of editing. I mean, the stories are all so compelling, and the people that you bring on. I was thinking in the teenage years, I would love my story has never been told quite like this before. I have written for years on the internet about my life in various snippets, but never like that. So it is a gift. And when I heard about Whit having that kind of scary bout of illness, I really do believe that he has such an empathy and such a skill in listening that he probably has taken a lot of this on subconsciously over the years. And you too, in hearing some of these stories, and not that it's a bad thing necessarily, but hopefully doesn't impact his health long term, because he is absolutely giving a gift not only to all of the storytellers, but all of the people who hear those stories and previously thought they were totally alone and now have this, community. Because what I wanted to do when I wrote back to all these people who emailed me, I said, like, thank you for emailing, and I'm so sorry you also went through this, but like there are thousands of us, and the more that we talk about it, the less shameful it becomes, and the more the light can erase it so that we can all heal for the next generation. So huge gift, and I'm so grateful.
Do you think it is something that you could play for your kids one day?
I do. I think probably not until they're full-on adults, because I think that there's probably a period, I don't like to think about it, but they're gonna question, right? They're gonna hear that I kept them from their father, probably. They can talk to my friends, they can talk to family, but they're still gonna have their own questions. So yes, I would like them to be able to listen one day and talk fully. And I think hopefully that will bring a lot of relief, because I know nobody gets out of childhood unscathed.
That's so true. Yeah.
Right? Nobody.
It's
Hopefully
it's heartbreaking to think about, but you're absolutely right. Let's go back a little bit. I want to ask you, and they're sort of the questions I always ask, but I'm just curious to hear, what was your experience of going through the process of being on This Is Actually Happening, from the pre-interview to the recording to the communication? There's tons of emails that go back and forth. How did you find that experience?
I found the whole experience incredibly cathartic. So like I've mentioned, I've been a writer online for several years, and I did, in the aftermath of all of this, every night when I couldn't sleep, I was writing chapters of like what was happening, like a real-time kind of journal, and it needed to come out so badly. But I knew that it couldn't, like I couldn't publish it because I knew that there would be ramifications and probably litigation, and I was just barely keeping myself afloat, with my kids and my job, and I didn't want to go that route, but I really thought, like, there's got to be others in this position. There's these ayahuasca operators still going. There's only the good side, and little specific portions talked about ayahuasca online, and I knew that This Is Actually Happening, I used to listen to. Back when I knew that something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it, I always had this disquiet inside, like, something is a little bit wrong with your life. Like, I don't know what it is. And I think I talked about that a little bit, but I used to think if I listen to This Is Actually Happening and all these terrible stories, like all of these people are in such harder boats than me. My head is not being gnawed off by a grizzly bear. I am like not trapped under concrete or being sexually abused. So I'm going to be okay. But I got to love the storytelling, of course. And I think it, developed my empathy more. And one day, instead of writing in my book and in my journal, I wrote an email to This Is Actually Happening after looking it up online. And I just shared a small snippet of my story. And I really didn't think that I would ever hear back. I knew it was a pretty big podcast, but I think it was within a couple of weeks that you got back to me. It might have even been sooner.
I'm glad it was quick.
Yeah,
I'm glad it was quick.
I think it was quick. I mean, it was quick that you got back to me. And then I recorded, I think, was 7 or 8 months down the line, which actually was great to give me time to think about, like, how much do I want to put myself out there? Is it anonymous or not anonymous? And then when I had the pre-interview with you and we delved into some of the details, obviously you do this job for very good reason. I felt super comfortable talking to you and it just sort of flowed out. And then when I had the final interview with Whit, I was like lying on the couch and like sweating like I was in some like mushroom therapy. But I was laughing, I was crying, I couldn't speak half the time. He interjects with like questions at appropriate times and obviously edits them out at the end. But like I said, I think it was about six hours that he whittled down into one. But he managed to include all of the really relevant sections of the story and also weave them into a cohesion that I couldn't have done in my writing ever. So I really was nervous, like I said, about the final product, but listening to it, I told a couple of friends I was doing this and they were like, oh God, like, yeah, is this a good idea? Like, you know how sensitive you are. You're going to be like looking at this after, like, is your ex going to hear it? Like this might not be a great idea. And then when I shared the episode with my best friends after, they were like, wow, they were all in tears too, even though they heard the story. There was like pieces of it that they hadn't known. And I think they're all listeners of the podcast now.
Oh, amazing.
And the ones that weren't before. Yeah, no, it was definitely an unforgettable experience. And again, I think there's a lightness, there's a joy that I have now, that it is out there, that it is outside of me, that I'm not carrying it around within myself, like that cement ball in my stomach anymore.
Yeah, we all share it with you. Yeah.
After you have like a good cry. Yeah, you share it with me, and thank you.
Did the show get anything wrong, or did you feel like there was a miss edit that you thought turned an idea in a way that wasn't meant to?
No, I think, in the beginning, like my section about my childhood, like my mom was super wonderful. Like she was really, really a good mom. And I think my dad, he tried hard, and we all have trauma because of stuff that our parents passed down to us. So I think that was a small part of the story, but I definitely listened a little bit and cringed for the part of like my mom kind of turning away at what happened with my dad when we were little, because I know she didn't think that she had any other choice. It was different for women in the 80s. Like they didn't necessarily have jobs or could take off or do what I've done and like solo raising my kids. Like she didn't have a university education and a career that she could like actually look after us. So I guess I felt that was the only piece that I was like, oh, I hope I didn't come off as harsh towards my mom, because she is an amazing human.
We've talked a little bit about you reading about yourself on social media after. Were there any specific, I know we talked a little bit about this, but are there any comments or questions that you'd like to address that people seem to suppose but were wrong about and you'd like to clarify?
There was one question, actually, I think I saw it a couple times, people saying like, well, what happened after the ayahuasca? Like, why wasn't he given any support? Because everybody knows that's an integral piece of it. And I think that because of his personality traits, he didn't think that he needed any support. He wanted to, he wanted to come up with his own brand of ayahuasca healing and like bring that to the
Right.
masses. And that was sort of part of the mania. Yeah. But also I think that, and I don't want to name specific names, but the healers in question here are still operating today, and they're operating on an only cash basis. I think they're taking advantage of people who are suffering and looking for kind of healing as a last resort. So I think that he's just like didn't have the proper training, isn't like a clinical counselor. I know where I live, and maybe Elly, where you live too, there's a lot more therapy by actual trained therapists with psychedelics who, and I'm not sure about ayahuasca anymore, but who can offer it in an environment. I think that if you go to some like random person who sat with a shaman in Peru, and you try and do this, it's going to end in disaster probably every time. I don't believe that you're ever going to be like healed for life from an addiction from like a quote shaman who has just happened to get his hands on like a Mexican blanket and some sage and wants to make a couple $1,000s. So yeah, I don't think they were legitimate healers, and that's why there was no follow-up.
Yes.
But they're underground, right? So there's not much you can do. It's still illegal in all of North America. So almost all of these places are operating illegally. So chances of you getting someone who's relatively unscrupulous, and this is stuff that can change the trajectory of your brain forever. So no one's really talking about like, we need some sort of like some controls on this because they're operating in darkness still. Yeah. So I don't know what the answer to that is.
Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about specifically about that?
I think those were the main ones. Other things, the only other things I saw were about the missing all of the red flags, bringing him in very early to live with my son and I. That is something that I definitely regret, but it was very, very fast, but, and I don't excuse it, but I definitely thought that this is what I've been waiting for. My parents had met him, my friends had met him. I did the background check on his ex-wife and all of her family, and like knew that he had no criminal record and knew that he had a great job, and did all of those things, knew that he'd never been physically abusive to anyone before. So I thought that, yes, I knew it was fast, but that's what happens when you fall like deeply in love with your soulmate, right? That's how I justified it. But of course now, would never do that, because honestly, I could have been with him for 3 years and then moved in, and the same result would have happened.
I mean, time frames are bullshit anyway. I mean,
right?
Sometimes people barely know each other and can be together for 50 years. I mean, all you can do is rely on what you know. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know how people are going to change. We just know that people can change and might change, and you're just hoping that you're in a relationship with someone that can bear the change with you. I mean, I don't know what else you can do besides that.
Yeah, I agree.
We came for you a little bit on Trauma Bonded, did we?
I felt like you guys were pretty soft on me. You asked me about my running, my running rival's hat. She wore a little white cap when she ran. I'll send you a picture if you'd like of the cap.
Yes.
It is funny because I talked to my other friend that I used to race with after that, and yeah, she remembers the hat too. It's like a little 80s, like weird little cap.
You did
like a
send it to me. Is it okay if I put that on our Instagram when we put up the episode? Okay. Yeah. No, I remember I was working in Milwaukee on a job when we did your episode, and we do this like heart of the story thing, and I just pondered it. I remember I was driving in this parking garage, just level by level, just thinking about what the heart of the story was. Because your episode was so heavy and so compelling, and we just started the show really, and we really wanted to do it justice. And I haven't re-listened to the episode or anything, but I think the heart of the episode for me was very much it was like sort of a case study in what love is supposed to look like and what love definitely doesn't look like. And I feel like you were really,
Yes.
you came correct with so many wonderful examples of both sides. So I say all that to say, you said that we were pretty soft on you in the episode. Did you think that we hit all of the hot topics of your episode on Trauma Bonded?
Yeah, I think so for the most part. I think that, what we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation about like a lot of burden kind of being put on the woman in these kind of relationships. I think that's one thing we kind of haven't touched on at all in all of this. Like, I think I received, it was close to 2,000 emails, like 1,800 and something, like, and I would say 2 were from men.
Wow.
And I don't know if it's like, and I know it's a mixed audience of the show, but I really think like women are sort of put in the position of deciding if a partner is going to be healthy, if they're going to help them. It's something that is culturally ingrained in us to look for these things and be grateful, right? We'll be grateful when the man who checks all the dots is interested in us and thinks that we're enough. Yeah. I don't know of many men who are around who kind of are in the same situation. Like, I know there are, but like, am I enough? Like, am I, thin enough for this woman? Am I like, do I make enough money? Like, are my snacks good enough to like keep his interests? And like, if I did this better, like, would she love me more? I know that there are, but I do think it's a greater issue in just understanding like, hey, we are good enough, just as we are, and without a man's approval.
Yes.
So
I think I don't know what it is. I do think that there is this camaraderie that does exist among women. And oftentimes it's probably unsaid, but I think we all know it's there. There's a lot more analyzation. I don't know if it's like men or, I mean, I hate to just categorize either. It's
I know.
General.
It's
yeah,
hard.
It's general.
Yeah.
I mean, they just seem to be like simpler. Like,
yeah, but is that because we've told them that they can be?
I know.
Right?
I don't know.
Like, I think it is because you're like, oh, like my mom said, women are better multitaskers. Well, are we? Or is it because we're expected to do the organization and the folding and the corporate stuff and the dinner reservations?
Girl, that's a whole other episode.
I know. I think it's just a piece of this that we maybe didn't touch on, but that's probably like,
so much expectations. And then when it falls apart, I mean, that anyone would have the wherewithal to put the blame on you in some way, the person that's like keeping this whole thing afloat, despite what he's done. It really speaks to a lot of internalized misogyny. I think we have 100%. On both sides.
Yeah. I think that that is a big chunk of it. And I'm so grateful that I do have I have such good friends and a big support system. And I generally don't have big enemies in life. Like, I feel like someone who had maybe a stronger personality, like a little bit, I don't know. I haven't had a lot of the vitriol that a lot of women in my shoes have. Like, and I'm able to provide, because of my job, a good life for my kids. But I think a lot of women who end up in abusive relationships don't, right? They fall apart under the crushing weight of the stigma of single motherhood and like, what did you do that you couldn't keep him? And the burden of it all often falls on them. And I hope that I can do some advocacy around that in future too. I think that it's either 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 households now in the US that only have a single parent home. And it's all like almost all women.
Wow.
So it's a bit of an epidemic.
What is next for you? What are you working on?
So I am going to publish that book. I'm going to do it anonymously under a different name. I
love that.
It's there. Yeah. And just because I think that I know that talking about it helps. This is not new material, but I like the idea of having it out there and potentially helping more people. So that, lots of volunteer work through, I don't know if I told you that my oldest son my middle son has a big brother through all of this because he's missing that male role model, and it's been wonderful for him.
Like through Big Brothers Big
Yeah.
Sisters organization?
Yeah, I applied
Oh my
years
gosh.
ago, and he is a wonderful young man. He's Irish and he grew up with lots of foster brothers and sisters, and he takes them out to do golfing. And it's been such an amazing thing to watch him thrive under the attention of, so volunteering there too. And just working to provide a great life for my kids. And I'm pretty happy where we all are, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I think that you are okay. Thank you for listening. This has been an episode of Trauma Bonded. You can find our show where podcasts are kept. If you like us, please rate and review us on Apple or other places. Rate us 5 stars and write, like it, love it, wants more of it. That's it. Take seconds. And thank you to Anonymous for sharing their updates and insights and all around general loveliness. Thank you to the This Is Actually Happening team, including Whit, Missildine, and Andrew Waits, and the maker of our music and website, Nathaniel Tromboli. And thanks to Forrest Chiras for editing this episode, and Katie Capel for building those blasted Instagram posts. You can contact us at traumabondedpod@gmail.com and find us on Instagram at traumabondedpodofficial, or visit our website at traumabondedpod.com. We are trauma bonded to the story, to the storyteller, to the listeners, and to each other. Thanks for spending time with us today. Love you, T. Wherever you are. I miss you. Come back to me. T? T?
Good job. Hey, thank you.
Hey, thank you. Okay. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Trauma Bonded.